Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Floyd. I'm reviewing week 5, what happened in class in English 141. So, at the end of week 4, last Sunday night, you should have turned in a draft of your summary in week 4. At this point, I have commented extensively on all of those. The effort of doing a draft and it being complete is, A work as far as I'm concerned on a draft. The harsher grading comes on the final when you've had a lot of feedback and attention to it and more time. And then it's really sitting up against the rubric. How does it score? So don't be surprised if you got an A on your draft, and don't think that means you're going to get an A on the final necessarily. And by then, when we turn it in again, it's worth 10% of your total grade. The draft was worth 5%, and you'll see that the draft is integral to being able to do week 5's hybrid activity. So if for whatever reason you didn't get a summary draft in, you need to be contacting me and talking about what you can do, what you can still salvage out of those like 3 grades involved with that. To find your feedback on the draft, because that's what drafts are all about, is getting the feedback. You want to go back to week 4 and find the assignment. There it is, writing project summary draft 1. When you go back into it, you'll see this line at the bottom, and it'll be filled in with your information. What was your title? When did you submit it? Your Turnitin similarity report will show up right here as a color, anywhere from yellow to green to red kind of stuff, depending on the match you got. And then the grade, there'll be a little pen here and a number. The number's your grade. But click on the pen that's right there, and it'll come up in the screen. You'll be able to see your paper with all the Turnitin highlights for matches, things that should be in quotation marks, right? And you'll be able to see all my comments on the right side of the screen. So those are things you really, because I kind of set it up like some general comment and then things you need to work on. And everybody had a list of things. So that is how you find the feedback for that. But now we are in week 5. And this week's all about peer review. So a lot of what we did in class involved this Google slide that I'll go through real quickly with you here about effective peer review, and the idea that nobody but nobody who is writing professionally or for any kind of an audience does that without having people read it once it's kind of out there, down on paper. Not very good, maybe, not very clear, certainly not as good as it can be. Then start getting the feedback from it. So I asked the classes, what's the best thing someone has ever told you in a peer review? And they said lots of kinds of comments about they fell into 2 categories, either straight up compliments. They told me that my voice was really good for this type of assignment, or that my intro was really catchy, or, people just listed compliments they'd gotten. But equally as many comments were very specific things people had told me. They told me a certain word I was using too much, and to think of other words. They told me a place where they couldn't follow what I was saying. Just super specific things, whether they were praise, compliments, or things to do. So we talked about the point of a peer review being that it's a natural part of the writing process, that it reminds you that you're not just writing for a teacher, you're writing in general for people to be able to understand you. And so when it's your peers that have to look at it and understand it, it kind of refreshes you to that idea a little bit. And hopefully, this is going to be worth 10% of your grade next Wednesday when you turn in the final. So everybody wants to have that be the best grade that they can. And so the real point is to help you there. So for this slide, I was asking, which feedback would you rather get? And wait, I have to give some responses to do that. So Okay, so these were the options. Awkward wording, not clear, or I don't know what you mean by, and then something specific from from the paper. Nobody in either class, all 4 times that I did this with you all split in two, nobody picked not clear. Nobody wanted to hear that. It didn't mean anything. A couple of people picked awkward wording, but by far and away, most people picked this. And the reason is it's specific, right? So if somebody puts in your margin, you have some awkward wording in places. If it's me, if I get that feedback, I'm thinking, well, where is the awkward wording, or what's not clear, and how do I make it clearer? So these kinds of comments aren't as helpful as sending me to a specific phrase I used that now I know people aren't following. And then we did that again one more time. Which one of these would you prefer to get? And this one's about citation. So you can say something really, really general, like you might want to look at your APA. Again, if I'm getting that comment, I'm thinking, well, what's wrong with it? Is it the cover page? Is it the reference page? Is it the in-text citations, the margins? What? And check your citations a little more specific, because now I can either be thinking they mean the in-text citations or the reference page, but I still don't know for sure. But if you say, I'm not sure, but I think you aren't giving enough info when you quote, like author and year, then that's making me look at my quotes specifically, and do I have those 3 pieces of info that we talked about last week? Also, this kind of language can model for you. A lot of students, I always hear, feel like, well, I can't give anybody feedback. I'm not good at this stuff myself, or I don't know for sure, blah, blah, blah. Sure, that's true, but you are a thinking human being who's read some words in a language you understand. So you think something, and you know, if you've been following the kind of skills things we've been looking at in class, you might be able to look at it, citation, the parentheses after a quote, and think, I'm not positive and I don't know why, but I don't think that looks right, and tell somebody. And that's helpful, because then if they're concerned about their grade, they'll go look. So the key here is to be specific. You're trying to help somebody, so general phrases like these aren't that helpful, but pointing to specific places where people can expand on their points or be more clear or fix specific problems is more helpful. So it's cut off, you can't see it, but this is all about specific praise, because we're human. Human nature says we want to hear what we're doing right and, have some positivity about things. So when you're given specific praise, you're saying what you like and why, what it made you think about, how it made you understand things differently. You're being specific about what page or paragraph you're complimenting. You're explaining how something the author did helped you to understand. So looking at how you cited made me remember I need to do that every time. Or your cover page looked great. I've been struggling with that. Just whatever. The way you talk about the conclusion, I didn't know how to conclude a summary when I'd already said it. And you give me a good example. So specific praise. And then we read this paragraph, and they all put up examples of specific praise they had for this. And the most common thing people praised was the citation. It's really good about author, year, then if there's a quote, page number, and the period's in the right place, and the little P. They like the specific, like the detail in the language up here, that the little boy can barely hold the remote and his mom's a room away. The details of what all the things she was doing were. Some people like that he included the statistic here. So I felt good. Everybody can come up with specific praise, it seemed like. Then we talked about specific criticism. So some of that similar stuff. It's got to be specific and point to a particular page number, paragraph. Don't underestimate the power of your questions. If you ask the author more questions about the article, it's going to force them to think of more things to say about the article. Human nature. Reading questions somebody's asking you, you're starting to think of how you'd answer. And this isn't easy. You can't do it, with trying to do it in 2 seconds, or with your mind really on something else, because you have to look and think about what would you do if this was your paper, and it's not work for the lazy. So don't be lazy with your classmates. Here are things you can say if you feel like you need language. Have you ever thought about not starting all the sentences the same way? What would it do if you just cut out the first couple sentences? Did the article talk about? Tell me more about what you mean by. And so this might be it's confusing wording, or you just literally are curious. You want to know more. I'm not sure, but I think you're putting the year in the wrong place. Sorry, but I have trouble following you in paragraph 4. Do you mean? And just by saying what you think they mean, that's so helpful to them. So we read this summary from a student in the summer session. And people put up on the board specific critical comments to help them. They tended to range from the majority were all this repetition of my source and I, because the first person's inappropriate for academic writing, and it's super repetitive. My source this, my source that. Now let's talk about my source. So there were some recommendations about getting rid of particularly this sentence. Now it's time to go into what my source states. Citation after ate the soil was noted. Yeah, those were some of the main things there. Repetition, not the right tone, language being used, and more citation. Oh, and it never names the article. That's something that was really important. All of your introductions should name your article and your author, so it's clear what you're talking about for the whole paper. Okay, this week right now, and if you've been absent and kind of detached, this is something you want to get on if you can. The hybrid activity involves a discussion board, but the discussion board you need to touch like 3 times. So you are going to first, these are just the exact instructions from the discussion board that's in week 5. You're grouped up with just 2 or 3 other people, and your initial post is just posting your summary draft, the Word doc, the same thing you turned in last Sunday night to me, posted up there. Then right now, everybody's in the midst of this part, reading the people who post in your same group, and that'll be just the only ones you can see, but reading them and responding with specific praise, specific criticism, questions. All of this is just word for word from the assignment in week 5. The kind of things you might respond to them with. Whoops, these were examples we did in class. And then the final steps is that then after you've gotten the feedback on your essay, you're able to kind of think about it and do a third post where you go back to your original post and say, okay, based on everybody's feedback, these are the things I'm going to do to my draft before next week when it's a final draft. So if we look at this in the course in week 5, it's just the only thing down here, hybrid activity 5, peer review with a small group. When you open it, there's all those instructions that were just. Oh, and I'm in student view, and I'm not a student, so let's see. This will let me out. There we go. So now we can I can see everybody. So like Brooke put in for her group, and Julian put in for his. He's already got a bunch of replies. These are people from the 07, the 11 o'clock section. But you should see the other people's and be, replying like this. So it's hurry and post your summary if you haven't. I'm sure your group is anxiously waiting to get their work done. Then reply to the people who show up on your screen, and then go back on Sunday night and go back to your discussion. You added a new discussion when you posted yours. Make sure you do that, and don't just post yours in response to somebody else's. And then go back Sunday night and say, okay, this is the feedback I got that I'm going to accept, because you don't have to accept everything everybody says,